It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace,
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Well, today we're going to talk about do-it-yourself home security. You know, making your home a sanctuary, somewhere you feel safe and at peace. Right? That's a nice positive way to look at it. We've all had where you
right.
wake up. I know I had one of my kids early on had like his bike, he left it in the yard and it's gone the next day, and then the neighbor kid is riding his bike around town and you have the squabble. Or just you come out one morning and find the tool shed had been ramsacked. I know one time when I was young and in the Navy, I lived in base housing, and it was in like Illinois there, Great Lakes or whatever, with Navy boot camp. And it was in base housing, and all the houses, they were like cinder block buildings and they're all connected. And you could hear like your neighbor setting their coffee cup on the table and like every noise. So the wife would always be like, "Oh, I hear something. I hear something." And I'm like, no, just ignore it. Whatever. It's just the neighbors. You're just crazy. And so we heard like the downstairs door, you have a screen door, you hear it slam or whatever. She's like, "That's our screen door. Somebody's down there." And I'm like, no, go to bed, whatever. And then there's somebody and they're standing in our bedroom because they're all like laid out the same. And the guy came into the bedroom there and opened the door. And so I'm like, oh shit. I get up and chase him, and I'm in my underwear or whatever, sliding down the stairs, run out into the field, chase this guy off. And I'm like, I don't want to be in a fight while I'm in my underwear. That's not what I'm looking for. But it turns out after that, I started locking the doors. I'm like, oh, that would be the other way to go.
That's step one.
Yeah. It turns
step
out
one in home security.
That's the first clue we're going to give you guys, is lock your doors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. Like, you have all these like creepy, like home invasion type situations going on anymore. And it's really pretty crazy. Like everybody gets the annoying unwanted phone calls. Well, people kind of get the unwanted like solicitation of people knocking on the doors, and like the ATF or whatever. You don't want those people there. Just lock your door.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I have all sorts of alcohol,
step.
Tobacco, and firearms in my house. They're not taking none of that.
They're not taking it, Kevin, moonshine, whatever. Who knows? I don't know what these kids are doing today.
One of the big start off with, have decent your doors and windows.
Okay.
They sell them all the time.
They might start with the brand
something where you can
set.
Yeah. If you can open your door where it can't be forced open afterwards, you know what I mean? Those little chains that they have, that's like a 10-pound force where you crack it open and peek out, and it takes about 10 pounds to knock that chain loose.
Kevin, do you have 10 pounds of force?
Be conscientious about the stuff. Be conscientious about that stuff. That's all I'm saying. Is there's shitty locks that you can get those.
Yeah, ones. Absolutely. Don't. Yeah. The next thing you might want to do, if we're sticking with the doors, so putting in heavier duty screws, right? Securing into the frame, making sure your frame is beefy. It's funny. I used to do a lot of repair work in the cities, and mediocre city, whatever. But you'd see every door frame looks like people have been in and out of every door with a screwdriver like 80 times or whatever.
Yeah.
And they sometimes have that big, heavy metal plate that covers so they can't get in with the screwdriver. Things like that might, step up your game. Putting in, like I said, beefier screws, they all come with like the 1-inch little screw to put into the door frame. How about you use a 3-inch screw and you just drive that bad boy home? You know, that's another way to go. Um, yeah, a door stopper. Those actual like, well, one, if you live in like a city or somewhere where you really kind of have a high probability of somebody kicking in your door, you might want those like latch where you have the bar that goes down to the floor. And, especially like the problem is in the country, people are like, well, why would I do that? Because I have 20 windows all around everything and they're just going to
Right.
come through a window if I have a heavy stopper. But if you're in the city apartment where that door is really the only access, from that
Right.
side, it's probably a pretty good idea, and on the other side, your windows are like 20 stories up. You probably
Hmm.
don't have to worry, so think about
Yeah,
covering your base.
I was staying at a place like that. It was just recently. It was on the third floor.
Yeah.
One door in and out. And the whole time my wife was like, there's only one way out. They're gonna
Exactly.
die.
Right,
But
right. Well,
I mean it does have benefits security wise that you only have one access point that you really have to worry about.
absolutely.
Obviously, if the fire escape, you want to make sure that window is, they have the tempered glass windows. They're make sure you have windows that can't easily be broken. But I've also seen was watching a video with a guy going through windows, and he was talking about how some of the windows you can just cut you know, cut the piece of glass out, getting around the
Yeah.
outside and remove the glass and just go right. So just be
Yeah,
conscientious
no,
about
that's
yard access,
absolutely
aside of just smashing them.
right. Right. Well, they sell that 3M film that you can tint it, mirror it, shade it, anything like that you can put over your windows to make them more secure. Now, obviously, Kevin just said you could maybe pull the glass out. That's a different game. Same thing. If the 3M film is on the outside, I guess they could, in theory, cut it right with a knife. And, they do sell glass cutters, but it's one more step of protection. Another thing is having good blinds or shades that one can obstruct people from coming in. Because if they don't know what's on the other side, it might add a little bit of deterrent, right? We could also talk about, having lights that go on and off in it with a timer if you're not home. Now, if it's exactly at 7:02, I guess it depends, how sophisticated of a villain you have out there coming after you, but it's something to be aware of. Another thing you guys might want to look into is like just motion lights, right? That kind of, it spooks people when lights turn on when they show up. Now, obviously, people look up and go, "Oh, wait, that's a motion light," whatever. Another thing you can do is think about putting them in a more discreet location. So like if you see the obvious, I don't know, I always, when they first started selling motion lights, you always had people with the like garage with the basketball hoop out next to it. And it would be like right there and obvious. So when the car pulls in, it lights up. But everybody kind of knows to like, hey, look at that entry point. There are certain go-to spots, right? Like the front of a barn or the front of a shed, that people are going to look for it. Maybe if it's a little bit hidden under an eave where the motion sensor points down, but the light. So just, it's nice to surprise people. That will, that little stealthiness, when you catch people off guard, it helps your game. And obviously people are aware, hey, this might be alerting other people to me being here, that light flipping on,
Right.
and same thing like a car alarm, right? It's the same idea. The car alarm doesn't stop a burglar, but it might cause people to look out and see, and that spooks people a little bit. So same idea.
Yeah, another thing that to keep in mind is having your front door be visible from the neighborhood. If somebody's going to go to your front door to try and break in, make sure that all the neighbors can see them. That's more of a deterrent for them when they look around and say, anybody looking out their window can see me over here with a crowbar trying to pry this door open.
Absolutely.
You
They
know,
always go to the back door and whatever if they can, right?
right. And having big shrubs and stuff around your front door just gives them a little bit more security when they're, when they're scoping your spot out. As far as back doors go, I would say 100% have your backyard fenced in, if at all possible, or at least, a section of your backyard portion fenced in. It just makes it one more step where people have to get past to access your house. I know a lot of people have the privacy fence up, and they'll have, a gate with no lock on it. You know what I mean? So they can just go in and out. It's easy. It makes it easy. You don't have to mess around with it every day. But it also makes it easier for somebody trying to get into your house and get onto your property.
Right. Well, that's it. I mean, you're always trading convenience for security, right? I mean, that's kind of how life works. I've also read about like kind of more discreet locks. So things seem obvious, like, hey, I can go get in there. And then when they go up there, oh, I'm not. Like when you have the big padlock hanging out front, they kind of immediately skip that and go whatever. But if you can kind of waste their time and make it where they kind of hit obstacle after obstacle, that's kind of a neat way to do it. Another one that's actually newer that I didn't even know existed, and when I started searching around for options, is they have motion detector sprinklers. So no, and I guess they use it for like rodents and things like that in your garden or whatever. But how cool is it if somebody walks into your yard and the sprinkler turns on them and
they're all wet?
That's not a bad way to be. Even if you just have annoying kids that come up and like try and get their kickball after they kick it in your yard, and now the sprinkler got me. That's
me and my wife are definitely like those old people at this point where we're hostile towards all children. Fucking kids outside laughing, making all that racket.
Who's having kids?
Why are you playing?
Exactly. There's also like, we could do the home security system, right? I was looking, I know I got one, was like pretty cheap, was like $59 for 4 cameras, and it like had the ability to add like 4 more. You could I looked now for something decent, it's like $219, but that'll record it. And any of these you can usually see on your phone. Obviously read the, descriptions and see what's available, but you don't need to pay a company for the fancy like monthly service to have something you can view on your phone. Turns out you can just buy something that my problem was I live in like a log cabin and I had to have it like hardwired. So if you can do the the Wi-Fi connections, they're super easy and you just go in, screw them wherever you want. Everything's good. Mine, the Wi-Fi doesn't really travel through walls that well. Actually, now that I have Starlink and I have, I guess they call them nodes, but you can have these different like boosters. They have the boosters that you can buy that are kind of questionable. And then they have ones that are like nodes are really, bigger things. I don't really understand how technology works, but turns out that's my whole business. But, we won't talk about that.
Yeah, I think I might have to up my game. I definitely have sections of my property where my Wi-Fi does not reach at all. So I'll have to look into up in that a little bit. Now, just to keep in mind though, when you have security cameras up, there are other people access certain security cameras. Door cams, I never get that just because it seems very for police to test that stuff. You can get circuit cameras. That's still possible if you're a paranoid, crazy person like me.
Right.
And just find.
Well, I have nothing on the interior of my house. That is intentional. But no, you absolutely need to be aware of that. And know that people are going to be able to see it. Because even if the government doesn't have access to it, which they absolutely do with Ring and everything else, but because Amazon and everybody who works with them just turns that stuff right over. They don't even care. But it's kind of like using a Liberty safe where they're like, hey, we got you, warrants, we don't care, just we love the police, whatever they do. I don't know. But
no, 100%. And it drives me crazy too, because it used to be that they would have to get a warrant, but all these companies are so eager to sell your information that now the police, FBI, they just buy it,
Yeah. We'll just give you access. Send us a check for an extra $50 a month and your police station, and we'll give you access to our network. It's probably a little different than $50. My information's a little more valuable than that. Like they probably have to pay $100 to get it. You know the drill. So yeah, another thing you might want to do is actually walk your property. Look for weak links, right? See where things are questionable and going wrong. I know at least every 6 months I go and walk the perimeter of my fence. And I know that sounds like a long time, but it's like 14 acres through thick woods and whatever. And I'm not expecting, they're not going to have to go 14 acres deep to break into my yard. I'm actually looking for like foxes or the dogs to get out or where are they getting in? And there's only so many hours of the day that you can, go, but you need to spend the time and look at what's questionable and where are the weak links where somebody could be getting in or, stuff like that. And the thing is, like, there's going to be obvious weak links, right? You come in and out of your house every day, it turns out. And there's going to be places that people can access your property, but know where they are and then start to think about how to address them. That's the big thing, look for unlocked gates and think like an intruder, think about, hey, where would they want to go? What's the obvious, easy to me, thing. Another thing you can do is plant appropriate bushes, right? Like a lot of the berry bushes have prickers. There's a lot of thorny things out there. Roses, roses under the windowsill. You tell your wife you're doing it because, she deserves beautiful roses out front. And it deters the bad guys. Kevin said,
right outside the window, you can smell it when you wake up. Baby, I did this for you.
I love you.
You're gonna love it.
And yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. And they smell nice. Everything's wonderful. Kevin had mentioned you don't want to make it that it's a place that a bad guy can hide, but you need to be a little strategic. Hey, is this going to be an asset or a negative? And you need to plan it out that way. Having a clear line of sight to things is very nice. And you just need to be aware of, what's going on. So look around. Another thing, Kevin had mentioned your neighbors, talk to them, there's nothing wrong with like a little bit of a neighborhood watch kind of thing. My neighbor next door, he lets me know, he's like, hey, I'm going out of town for 2 days. Can you keep an eye on things? Can you look at this? If you see somebody, let me know, whatever. Another thing, set up trail cameras. If you didn't want the full on security thing, the trail cameras are very nice. I've talked about how they have manhunts in my neighborhood. The trail cameras, come in handy to track those guys down. Hey, it works.
Yeah. I mean, definitely having an eye on your property, especially if it's, if it's more than a quarter acre or something. Knowing who's coming through your property, what I mean? Maybe you just want to know whether deer going back through there so you can go hunting later on. Maybe you want to know if there's that use the trail, along the back of your house. Maybe you love having little kids going, through the woods by your house, and that's fine. It's nice to know that they're there. It's nice to know who's around your neighborhood, what's around your neighborhood. If a black bear comes past your house every night at dusk, maybe it's good to know that before you're out, walking the dogs in the woods behind the house and run into a black bear. It's good to have an idea of what and who's coming through your area.
Yep. No, absolutely. No, there's another, like, you could step up your game. Now, here's where you get into more, questionable things. I started looking at, I have Ragnar Benson has books on man trapping and traps, and he thinks all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
I was looking at
I love his
Johnny.
books. He's really like
Yeah.
out of his mind, and I love that shit.
Yeah, exactly. He's the guy who wrote oh, the Encyclopedia of what is
Man
the one?
rapping.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's got a million books out there that are just awesome. And anyway, he's got some great ideas. I know one of them he was talking about being in Iran and opium fields. And he's like, yeah, we used to catch, they'd have vipers going around, poisonous snakes, and we could tie their tails and hang them from trees. And so people would walk into the barn and we'd have them right at face height. And turns out it's illegal to do any kind of trap that's going to hurt somebody on your property. I'd have to point that out here. But I'm just saying,
Just
if the
just so
world
you
ends,
know.
that's something you might want to keep in your back pocket, right?
Make sure you put shit on your punchy sticks.
Right, exactly. You have the holes that you see in Vietnam, you step and then an infection and it doesn't end well. Kevin, that's not good. Now Amazon actually has noise making traps. They have these like perimeter trip alarms that they sell in both a 22 option or a 12 gauge option, where you can just buy blanks for both of those. Some of you guys don't know, but you can actually just go to Home Depot and buy 22 blanks for noise making kind of thing. Now, there was another option back in the day. They used to take like grenade tops, and you used to be able to buy these on eBay. I don't know if you can anymore or not. I know that they were available, I'd say about 3 years ago. I've seen them. Where the same thing, these, you could drill it out, and I imagine you could drill a hole the right size for 22 blanks. The ones I had were shotgun primers that just fit right into there. And you just set up a string and it just basically gives you that pin snap kind of option. So there's cool things you could do there, but you got to keep your options open. You got to see what you can do. Again, anything that would hurt somebody is absolutely illegal, because the thing is, you never know when some little kid is going to wander onto your property or your neighbor's dog or, whatever. And then you're kind of the dick. It kind of sucks when you hurt somebody and whatever, and it turns out felonies are bad. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Kevin, felonies bad.
Pathetically. Yeah.
Right. Like in a movie. Well, I think it's only if you get caught. Is that how that works?
It's only if you get caught. I mean, it's not illegal if you don't get caught, Yeah,
that is, I think, how the world works.
Yeah. Let's talk about securing your outbuildings.
Yeah.
Padlocks. Padlocks are great. They're really hard to get through. I always recommend that people carry bolt cutters through them because they're easy to get through with bolt cutters. But if you're out there with a screwdriver or a crowbar, you're not going to get that padlock loose unless you really work on it. You're going to have to spend some time working on that. And I know a lot of people that have been robbed and never had their house broken into. You know what I mean? Four-wheelers, outdoor stuff that just gets stolen off their property.
Absolutely.
Dirt bikes. I had a lawnmower go missing once. And I called the cops. Cops showed up. And one of the police officers showed up. He said, yeah, I saw that guy. He said, I saw him walking down the road pushing a lawnmower. I thought he was going to help his neighbor. He said, it was about 2 hours before. So the guy wasn't there anymore. But yeah, he just walked up, saw my lawnmower, and just started pushing it down the street.
Yeah, that's the world we live in. And the problem is, if you don't have video of the guy doing it, or some good pictures, some clear photos of, hey, here's his face and my wrench in his hand or whatever.
Right.
You're not getting that stuff back. It's not going to happen.
If you get stuff stolen from your house, you're never getting it back. It's just not
unless
going to happen.
You have the awesome video and you're like, I know this guy. Yeah. Like even if you show, here's the picture of the guy and the guy's like, on your camera, if you don't know who that guy is, cops don't care. Turns out it's not like NCIS or whatever, or CSI, where they're going to run it through facial recognition and nail down that guy. It's not going to happen. But if if they're like, oh, that's Jimmy the thief, we always see Jimmy the thief, I'm going to go talk to him,
Right.
then that might work for you. So you got to use your options, right? Another thing I forgot to mention when we were covering the doors and stuff like that is, don't forget the old basics. Like the sliding glass doors used to have the dowel people would put on the base of it to keep people from sliding it open. You can do that for your windows and things like that. They actually have little locks that, not the traditional lock, but they have like some fold down latches that you can do to kind of make it so your windows don't pop up easy. A lot of those little old traditional locks people pop with a screwdriver or whatever pretty easy, but you can have these like little 90-degree brackets that can, kind of secure things a little better. But you need to decide what's right for, your ease of use, how paranoid you are, how likely things are to turn bad in your neighborhood. I mean, I actually have
Right. I mean, you could put bars over your windows.
Yes.
But do you really want to have bars over your windows?
Yes, I do.
Maybe you do.
I do.
Maybe that is perfect. Maybe that just drives you crazy because you like to look out your windows and watch the birds
and see the
and stuff,
bunnies, right?
I don't know.
It's all about seeing the rabbits in the
I don't know
yard
what
and
you're
the,
into.
the deer, the beautiful fawns. Kevin, it's an ugly world out there. But that's the thing. And the other thing is kind of pay attention. Who's going around? Who's out there and, driving by your house, that same car every day? Maybe that guy's going to work because he lives 3 houses up and he goes to work every day on a Tuesday. But if you learn the patterns and the routines of your neighborhood, then you can kind of recognize when things are wrong and out of place.
Right.
So that's, something you might want to do. You might want to start paying attention.
Yeah, I have a house a little ways down the street from my little ways down the street from me, and I know that
Do they call it the crack house?
I do, yeah, because there's people that show up. I'm assuming there's people that show up late at night and stay for 5 minutes and leave. I'm assuming he just has some sort of at-home business that he runs himself. That maybe he's selling crack, maybe he sells doors and people like to come by and pick 10 o'clock at night. I don't know. But I know that I'm aware of those people.
He's a crochet expert.
That's right. That's right. Also, a lot of people have spare keys in case they lock themselves out. Maybe that plastic rock that's next to your house looks very obvious that it's a plastic rock that looks exactly like the one.
They know about that?
That other people, don't put your spare key under your mat or on your, the frame of your on the sill of your door.
At least if you're going to have a hiding key, have it 20, 30, 100 feet away from the door that it unlocks. Like, so it's not hey, I can look here, obvious. If it's, somewhere hidden up in a hole in a tree, 300 feet away, not a problem. And that way your kid comes home and he's screwed up and whatever, he can go find it.
Lost his key.
But it doesn't need to be, when it's in that 10-foot perimeter around your front door, it's a mistake. That's the bottom line. But if you had it, under the rock behind the shed, behind the house, maybe that works, or behind the tire swing, right? That might work for you, but don't have it right where where it's obvious to everyone. That's what I would say. Kevin, I like it. That's definitely a good way to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to talk about is basic online security. Going out of town for a week, don't put it on Facebook. Don't announce to everybody that you know and don't know that's on your Facebook that you're going to Cancun for a week. Woo! No, don't do that.
No.
Keep it low key. Post your pictures when you get home. You know what I mean?
What about when I go buy that new $5,000 four-wheeler? Can I share that with all my friends? The pictures on Facebook?
Don't. Yeah, exactly. That I'm talking about. When people are scoping out your house, they're going to look through your windows and see if you have anything worth stealing. If you just announce it online to everybody, that makes things so much easier for them.
Yeah, I know everybody does this, but one of the big things on like YouTube and stuff is to do like the farm tour or the garden tour. And like I might show my garden, but if you go walk the property and kind of show everything, it's like, hey, here's how you could rob me. Here's what you see, how open everything is. You see I'm not going through locks. You see I'm going in and look at the big tractor in the barn. Look at the fancy tools. Here's my wall of 100 tools. Here's where I keep all my, electrical tools. And, how many of us have like a shed or a garage with like a battery powered grinder right in there? And somebody's like, oh, I could just go get that and then go make my way through the rest of the house. And everything would be, slick and easy. That's the thing. You just need to be aware. Yeah.
Go to a pawn shop. Go shopping at a pawn shop and see what they're selling, because that's what people want to rob. Those are the things people want to steal. It's full of power tools. People love to steal power tools because you can resell them easily.
And that's what sucks is you pay, $100 for something, $200 for something, depending how cheap you are. And then sure enough, they're going to go sell it for $10. And that sucks.
It really sucks. Yeah.
They even talk about like having like decoys. Like it turns out having all your, hey, I have all my silver coins in my top dresser drawer, or I keep that big extra stash of cash in my underwear drawer. No one will ever think of that. Turns out they might think of that.
Yeah. I had my father-in-law used to be a thief. Like that was his, breaking into houses when nobody was home, when people were at work. And he said it was easy. You just bring a pellet gun, you shoot out the back window, the back door, unlock it, go in there. And he said the first place you go is jewelry box, looking for a jewelry box and looking through the underwear drawer. That's the most likely place people have stuff saved. So obviously don't hide
Not
things
the place.
There,
Yeah,
and that was just his deal. Every day he would go out like people go to work. He would go out just after they left and just go from house to house, this neighborhood, that neighborhood, Yeah, he spent some time in jail, but I mean, he didn't really give a shit. Most of the time you don't get caught. Most of the time they didn't catch me. And this is back in the day before Emmers, but it was really
but do you think
really
cops are really
doing
doing a better job? Yeah. Do you think cops are really doing a better job catching break-ins right now? You think it's any different
100%.
than it was 30 years ago?
No. Even if you have a camera,
3 hots
if you have
and a
footage
cop,
of it,
right?
like you said, it's not a big deal. And stealing less than $1,000 worth of stuff is not even really a big crime.
It's wrong, Kevin. It's morally wrong. Just putting that out there. Yeah. Turns out, spend a little time, come up with some better hiding places, maybe some decoys. Hey, you leave $100, 5 20s in that dresser drawer, and then they don't think, hey, there's more money somewhere, and find the, whatever, the $1,000 you have hidden somewhere, under the ottoman in your living room, wherever it is you put something, right? So be a little creative, learn to hide things, learn to think outside the box. Maybe, we're talking about plants. I saw one of the comments, you could plant poison ivy around the house. It's not going to work for that minute, but 2 days later
down the road,
that guy is going to be unhappy. And you might be able to identify the thief, when you're at work with your buddy and you were like, hey, I was just telling you about my 4-wheeler. Now it's gone. And I can't help but noticing you're itching your arms all the time. I wonder what happened.
Right. Yeah. And the truth is, most of the time when your stuff gets robbed, it was somebody you knew,
Yeah.
It was a neighbor a few streets down the house. If you're going to rob somebody, don't rob your friends' houses, and don't rob somebody in your neighborhood. Go to a different neighborhood to commit your crimes.
Yeah. I was
places where you're not known.
I was just watching, I think it's on Prime. might be on Netflix, whatever. But there's that guy from Mad Men, the main character, whatever. He's got a show, a movie or a TV show or something they were advertising where he's like a rich guy and he loses his job and he's like, hey, I should just go around my neighborhood and rob all my friends. And that's kind of like what he does. I didn't get a chance to watch it yet, but it intrigued me a little bit. I was like, oh, I should check that out.
We'll have to check it out
and see if he has any clever ideas. That's the thing. If you watch or pay attention to shady people, you realize what they might be trying to do to you. I'm just saying. They come up with the clever ideas and you can kind of work a way to get around the things. I mean, his thing was people don't even notice. The guy's got like, these are like baller level people. So he's got like 10 watches in a drawer. It's like, if I take one, who's going to even notice, or one? I mean, that's how it was in the trailer. Right. Well, I probably left that somewhere. Like, you don't know, because nobody's going to come in and take one of 10 watches. They would take 10 watches. If one goes missing, you're like, did I do something? But that's the thing. So think outside the box a little bit on that. And also pay attention. Be aware of, hey, one is missing. I don't. So anyway, that's what I got. I think if you guys have ideas of how you could protect yourself, how you can keep things smooth and, keep things the way they should be, then maybe put it in the comments, maybe in the show notes here in a review, throw your idea out there. Also, we haven't asked in a long time. If you guys have not left a review for this podcast, wherever you listen to it, it would be awesome if you guys left a review. That's a big thing for, how it spreads it, keeps it going and that kind of thing. Leave a review in Spotify or iTunes or wherever it is, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. And I know it's kind of difficult to figure out how to do it. I never know how to do those things. I'm like, oh, I want to give that guy a review, but you don't even know. It's like, it's just hard. We also have a Patreon at patreon.com/preppingbadass. You could check that out if you're interested in supporting the show. I can talk, get a little, what is it? I don't know. Anyway, so questions, concerns, thoughts, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. And otherwise, I would say stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.